I would like to call to order this regular governing board meeting of the Jefferson Elementary School District for May 25th, 2022. May I please get members present?
Ms. Liainga Anoy,
Here.
Ms. Brizuela, Ms. Jordan,
Here.
Mr. Ali,
Here.
Mr. Koo.
Here. Next is the Pledge of Allegiance led by students from Thomas Edison Elementary School. Okay.
You ready?
Please stand for the pledge. Put your right hand over your heart, left hand by your side. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all.
Good job, guys. Cool. Great job. Thank you so much. Next is the approval of the agenda.
Before we approve the agenda, I'd like to ask if we can take a couple items off the consent agenda. Is that all right? Okay. Item 10C and 11D. 11B.
10C and 11B.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other changes? If not, I'll entertain. That's
I
right.
have one. If you could please remove also 10D.
10D.
10D. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Sorry, can you turn your mic?
Consent. Yeah. Consent.
They were just removed from the consent calendar. Yeah.
Any other changes? If not, I'll entertain a motion on approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with the amendments as stated by fellow trustees.
Second.
First and second, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That was unanimous. Next, 5A, special presentations. One school, one book program at Thomas Edison Elementary School. Riza Bell, principal at Thomas Edison Elementary School, and students will present on the one school, one book program just completed at the school. This program is designed to create a shared reading experience across an entire school community. Ms. Bell?
All right. Thank you. Come here, guys. Yeah. Yes, your brother will help you close. It's on the back. Okay, you guys want to go right in front here? Or you want to stay back here with me? Up to you. Okay, stay right here. Okay. So, good evening, board, cabinet. Sorry, good evening, board, cabinet, members of Paul. Welcome, everyone. I would like to talk to you about Thomas Edison's One School, One Book program. One School, One Book is a program designed to create a shared reading experience across an entire school community. Everyone at Thomas Edison was included. The program states that the more people you can involve, the better. This was a 3-week process where everyone was reading The Lemonade War by Jacqueline Davies. And every student, teacher, and staff at Thomas Edison received a copy of the book and a reading schedule. Thank you to our PTO for purchasing the books.
Ms. Bell tried to make the program stress-free for teachers, staff, students, and families. Run at the same time as our readathon so we can count our reading of the Lemonade Wars as part of our readathon minutes. A community builder without large gatherings to keep us safe from COVID. We all read one chapter a night on the same schedule. We had an optional packet to do with family or friends, and mini quiz lotteries for each chapter with prizes to be won.
Why should we read? It exercises our brains. It is a form of free entertainment. It improves sleep. It increases our general knowledge. It is motivational. It reduces stress, and I also love to read.
The packet included compare and contrast charts, comprehension questions, vocabulary, synonyms, sentences, and drawing what the word means.
Book review like this one. Designing your own book cover and much more.
When we turned in our mini quizzes and packets, we won prizes. Some of the prizes were popcorn with the principal, lunch with a friend, pick a book, lunch packet party, music break with the principal, and the whole school is getting a lemonade party during our field day.
So I want to congratulate the Thomas Edison community. Altogether, we read 27,323 minutes in a 3-week period. And a huge special thank you to Fiona O, our top fundraiser. She read almost 2,000 minutes and raised over $2,000. And her mom says that all she likes to do is read all the time. So it was wonderful. Thank you so much. And I want to thank Tyler and Terrence and Za and Amelia for doing such a great job.
Thank you very much. Also,
What? Thank you so much.
cool. Thank you so much. Any comments from board members?
Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much for being here and for making that presentation. You all did such a phenomenal job. I did not also miss that you're all coordinated and wearing the yellow and giving us lemonade. It's such a treat. I have never read the Lemonade Wars, and now I think I'm probably gonna pick it up and read it. Keep reading. It is a skill that you will continue to use all the way until, college and beyond. And so I just really want to applaud the community for moving this forward. And I would hope to see this in our other schools as well.
I'd like to say thank you for coming and sharing all this. And you children are really, you're awesome. because you're going to be doing this for ever and ever and ever. It's going to be really great for you. But thank you for coming and sharing, and I love what you did, and thanks for all of this. I'm going to drink this later.
I want to say thank you too. This is one of the special parts of our meeting I can say we always look forward to having our students participate. And I love the coordinated effort. Got the yellow going on. I especially love all of the minutes that you all collectively read. That was pretty impressive, and the money raised. I too would like to see this initiative replicated at all of our schools. And I truly appreciate, this is one of my favorite drinks, so I truly appreciate the treat. But as you heard earlier, you will continue to use this skill throughout your entire life. And what you do is when you model reading, you influence others and encourage others in your class, in your family, in your communities to do the same. So way to go to be champions of literacy. So thank you again to you all, to our educators, to Thomas Edison, and to your families to supporting your effort. Take good care.
Thank you so much, Principal Bell, and the students that came here to present to us tonight. I'm very proud to hear you, not only how much you enjoy reading. I'm actually an English teacher, so that automatically you have my eyes and ears open. But how well you spoke today. All of you are you're already young leaders, so keep up the great work and keep reading. And don't forget, it's almost summertime, so you have a lot of time to do summer reading next.
I don't want to repeat everyone else, but just say great job. Sounds like a great program at Thomas Edison, and it sounds like all the students and the community definitely appreciate reading Lemonade Wars. Look forward to seeing what the book next year is. And just wanted to say thank you for coming out tonight too. And then I'll say on top of that, we have a couple of things to give away to our students tonight. So I'll pass these over to my colleagues to present to the students.
I'll start us off. This is the certificate of appreciation for participation in the flag ceremony and special presentation. And this goes to Tyler. Is it Seth? Did I get it right, Tyler? Did I say it right? Thank you.
We have a certificate of appreciation for participation in flag ceremony and special presentation for Amelia.
Last but not least, I have a certificate of appreciation for participation in the flag ceremony and special presentation to Da Shui Guan Lu, and that apologies if I pronounced that incorrectly.
Thank you again so much, and let's give them all another round of applause again as well. Cool. Thank you again so much for coming tonight. I'm gonna. Cool. Next item is item 6A, board member acknowledgement and commendations. I will start on my far right, Ms. Lingan Away.
Yeah, I actually don't have any acknowledgments or comments. I mean, I think we're all feeling a level of heaviness. It's been pretty difficult to process, the most recent events of this grave loss. So I'm just very grateful to be here today. I'm very grateful for our school site staff and administrators for ensuring that, that if such events occur, we are as prepared as we can be, but to continue to lift the families that have lost so much in prayer.
I don't have much to say. Reflections. It's just hope everybody can be safe and happy. Just wish everybody. It's just too much drama that you see happening all over the place, and I hope that things will get better for everyone, especially when the lives of children are affected.
I echo my fellow trustees' sentiments. It has definitely been heavy in recent events, and then 11 days before that, or 10 days before that, just continued tragedy in this nation. And as a mom and obviously being a school board member, I am just grateful for our community and our staff for sending out a note to our families, acknowledging that this is happening and giving, I guess, ways to have the difficult conversations with our community. So I do appreciate that. On a more positive note, I had the honor of attending the Student of the Year awards, and that was really positive. It was so great to see the families in person. I know last year they were in their cars, and this year we were able to have it indoors and round tables, and just see them face to face. And so that was really, really great to see. And I hope, we continue down this path, even though COVID is still lingering in our community, to be able to meet in person and hear presentations like we did tonight and engage with our community. So, and I also know we have upcoming graduations, and we have not back to school. Now I can't remember the name of the event. Open house. There we go. We have open house at our sites coming up, and so I'm really happy that we're able to do that. I know last year was all virtual, so again, just hoping that we can continue down this path.
Okay. Thank you. I would like to acknowledge and commend all the youth filmmakers that are part of the Youth Cinema Project. I know we have an event coming up. When is this? June 7th, where their films will be shown at the theater here in Daly City. And then also commend the staff and the students in the community around Ben Franklin Middle School. I was able to do a school visit, my first of this year, and I went to Ben Franklin on Friday, and I saw a resilient group, and everything was in order. I was able to give a happy report to Superintendent Vidales, and they invited me to go to their school dance. So that was good to hear that they got that school dance that they wanted. I didn't go, but I know that it was scheduled on the blacktop. So I thought that was interesting as well, to have a nice outdoor dance. And so I'd also like to acknowledge as well the tragic events that have occurred. But I'm not going to add any more comments to it. I think enough has been said.
I just want to also acknowledge and commend a couple events I attended Student of the Year ceremony as well with Ms. Visuela and Ms. Jordan. Great event. It was great to see everybody back in person and celebrate sort of successes of students throughout the year. Last week, I also attended the open house at Fernando Rivera. It was great to see so many people actually back on campus having an in-person open house. I just want to, it's nice to see things back open in person. a little bit more. And then also wants to commend the district and the staff for actually officially breaking ground on the workforce housing project we have at the MP Brown site. It's actually nice to see that there's actually construction crews on site and actually starting the full initial build. So just look forward to seeing it as it actually goes up in terms of heights, and then eventually when we get our own ribbon cutting as well too, to see that too. And lastly, similar to what everybody said, just acknowledge the events of yesterday. I know it takes a huge burden on a lot of families, especially in Texas right now. So just want to make my acknowledgments about that. And yeah, that's all. Next item is superintendent comments.
Thank you. So I first learned of the events in Texas when I received a communication from our Daly City Police Department acting chief, Cameron Christensen. Sort of caught me off guard. I was working. It was middle of the day. He tells me, I'm following the situation in Texas. We'll be on high alert. And I'm like, what situation? So he told me a little bit about it, and I looked it up, and it was literally a punch in the gut. It's sickening and senseless, and took me a while to process and be able to write that message to families later in the evening. But I feel like times like these certainly show us our vulnerabilities as a society and as a community, but at the same time, it demonstrates our strength and how we can come together. And I really hope that Daly City will be stronger because of this. I know our relationship, with school safety and our police department has grown in the last several years, and it is a partnership now. Officers were at school sites today, making their presence known, ensuring families see them and know that they are watching over our schools. And I appreciate that from our department. So as many of you mentioned, we've started the end of the year events, and our motto this year is we can gather safely. We've learned so much about the virus, how it spread, what are the mitigations that we need to put in place to keep people safe, and you've seen several examples of this already. We'll be doing graduation again outdoors for our large middle schools at Westmore. Families won't have to sit 6 feet apart like we had them sit last year, so they just might all be, in the center section, but everyone will choose where they'd like to sit. And of course, our youth cinema project event coming up here in the last week of school. It's nice to gather, especially after not being able to for so long. It's nice to see people's faces, their bodies, their whole selves, and we are all appreciating that and learning what it means to be able to resume life, given the new guidance that we receive. So we're all for that, and with fear and trepidation, we take every step. So thank you for your support and for your guidance during the last 2 years and helping us navigate through the pandemic and the guidelines, and your guidance is going to continue to be needed as we move forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Next item is item 7A, consent agenda. The administration recommends approval of start items on the rest of tonight's agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second motion.
There's a first and a second. May I please get a roll call?
Yes. Ms. Manupuleinga Anoi,
Yes.
Mrs. Marie Brizuela.
Yeah.
Ms. Andrea Jordan,
Yes.
Mr. Shakil Ali,
Aye.
Mr. Clayton Koo.
Aye.
Thank you.
That was unanimous. Next item is item 7C, 2022-2025 CSEA Chapter 233 Successor Contract Proposal Sunshine and schedule a public hearing. A public hearing will be held on June 8th, 2022 to receive public input on the CSEA Chapter 233 Successor Contract Proposal for the 2022-2025 school years. CSEA is proposing to open negotiations on Article 5, Wages, Article 6, Health and Welfare, Article 7, Holidays, Article 8, hours and conditions of employment. Article 9, layoff procedures and seniority. Article 11, leaves. And Article 17, miscellaneous provisions. The administration recommends setting a hearing date, acknowledging the receipt of and direct sunshining and distribution for public review of the successor contract proposal for the 2022-2025 by CSEA, Chapter 233, as required by the RADA Act. Mr. Pinelli.
Essentially, yes, the next 4 items are just setting the hearing date where we invite the public to comment on any of these negotiation items.
Any questions or comments from board members? If not, I will entertain a motion on this item.
I have a question. Is it possible to have a motion to approve all those items? Are they all on the same date?
Well, I think we should probably at least read out what those articles are that are going to be negotiated, just for the public who may not have an agenda in front of them. So I think we should just take them one at a time.
So then if there are no comments, I can make a motion to approve the 2022-2025 CSEA Chapter 233 Successor Contract Proposal Sunshine and Schedule of public hearing.
First and a second, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That was unanimous. Next item is item 7D, 2022-2025 JESD counterproposal to CSEA, Chapter 233 Successor Contract Proposal Sunshine and Schedule of Public Hearing. The public hearing will be held on June 8th, 2022 to receive public input on Jefferson Elementary School District's counterproposal to CSEA, Chapter 233 Successor Contract Proposal for the 2022-2025 school years. Jefferson Elementary School District is proposing to open negotiations on Article 5, wages, Article 6, health and welfare, Article 7, holidays, Article 8, hours and conditions of employment, Article 9, layoff procedures and seniority, Article 11, leaves, Article 14, grievance procedures, and Article 17, miscellaneous provisions. The administration recommends setting a hearing date, acknowledging the receipt of and direct sunshining and distribution for public review of the successor contract proposal for 2022 to 2025 by CSEA Chapter 233 as required by the RADA Act.
I move that we approve the JESD counter proposal for 2022-2023. Excuse me. Yes. CSEA chapter number, I got to use this now, 233, successor contract proposal sunshine and schedule a public hearing.
Second.
First and a second, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That was unanimous.
Say it wrong. Okay, it was 2022 to 2025.
Yeah. Next item is item 7E, 2022-2023 AFT contract proposal sunshine and scheduling of public hearing. A public hearing will be held on June 8th, 2022 on AFT Local 3267 contract proposal for the 2022-2023 school year. AFT is proposing to open negotiations on Article 2, wages, Article 3, hours of employment, Article 6, health and welfare, and Article 10, class size. The administration recommends acknowledging the receipt of indirect sunshining and distribution for public review the contract proposal for the 2022-2023 by AFT Local 3267 as required by the RADA Act.
If there's no comment or questions, I make a motion to approve 2022-2023 AFT contract proposal sunshine and schedule of public hearing.
Second.
First and a second, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 That was unanimous. Next is 7F, 2022 to 2023 JESD counterproposal to AFT Local 3267, contract proposal sunshine and schedule of public hearing. A public hearing will be held on June 8th, 2022 on JESD's counterproposal to AFT Local 3267 for the 2022-2023 contract. JESD is proposing to open negotiations on Article 2, wages, Article 3, hours of employment, Article 6, health and welfare, Article 10, class size, and revising language throughout the document to reflect current law. The administration recommends direct sunshining and announcing time to receive public input on JESD's counterproposal to AFT Local 3267 for the contract proposal for 2022-2023 as required by the RUTA Act.
If there are no comments or questions, I'll make a motion to approve 2022 to 2023 JESD counterproposal to AFT Local 3267, contract proposal sunshine, and schedule of public hearing.
Second.
First and second, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 That was unanimous. Next item is item 8B, Local Control Accountability Plan, LCAP, draft update. The administration is bringing forth the latest draft of the Local Control Accountability Plan, LCAP, for the public and the board to review and ask questions. A final draft will be presented at the June 8th, 2022 board meeting for public hearing and consider for approval at the June 22nd, consider for approval at the June 22nd, 2022 meeting.
Okay.
Ms. Scott.
Thank you. I have my colorful slides back again. All right, so the purpose of this presentation tonight is to provide you as the board with a second update of our LCAP for the 2022-2023 school year. This presentation includes updated survey results and any changes made to the plan that reflect this additional data. So LCAP goal number 1, we have 2 updated actions. The goal is to prepare students to pursue college and or career once they graduate from high school. We have a revised action with ethnic studies. The middle school group has met twice now with myself and Stephanie Martinez and have finalized 2 pathways moving forward. They have designed a 6th grade elective course that has been both piloted as a semester and as a year long. They are going to continue that elective course next year for all 6th graders, possibly opening up to 8th graders as well. And they will work together over next year to create 3 different elective classes for ethnic studies, 1 per grade level, that will be open to all students. And they're standalone electives, so a student can take the ethnic studies all 3 years or 1 per year. Then we're also going to work on integrating the philosophies and practices of ethnic studies into all classrooms so that all students gain access to kind of the beliefs that support this way of thinking. And then a new action that we added through ongoing communication with our library staff, a need was identified to align funds allocated per site for library books. So in response, we've created a new action to set a standard minimum of 10% of local parcel tax dollars to purchase new or replacement library books. We received, I think last time I spoke, the family survey had just been sent out and we were still collecting staff responses. So those have been finalized. When asked this prompt, staff responded 80% favorably and families 66% favorably. You'll notice in all of the slides around the data for the surveys, there is a gap between staff and family. So we need to determine if it's a perception gap or a reality gap and then figure out what needs to be done to close the gap. So the actions that align in our plan to respond to this data is just to continue to provide access for all students to our California state's standards aligned materials and high quality instruction, and continue to provide a summer learning program, which is coordinated by our administrators in alignment with the Big Lift initiative, which includes re-engagement and enriching learning for entering kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade students, and then continuing 3rd through 8th grade students who are EL and low income, and extended school year for students in special education. For LCAP goal number 2, there are no additional metrics or actions for this goal. beyond what was presented 2 weeks ago. When responding to this prompt, for goal number 2, 75% of staff responded favorably and 66% of families responded favorably. Some actions in our LCAP that support this goal. We're moving closer to hiring 10 EL support teachers who will provide designated ELD instruction across the district. We will provide ongoing training on integrated and designated ELD across all schools. And we'll continue to provide Imagine Learning for our students who have been in the country less than 3 years and for students who have scored a 1 on the LPAC. Imagine Learning is an online adaptive learning solution that accelerates reading and language proficiency and is designed to supplement core literacy. For goal number 3, we have updated metrics that we didn't have at the last presentation. So the Panorama survey that we administer to students, staff, and families, we finalized the staff Panorama survey. Our baseline in 2020 was that 50% responded favorably to the amount and quality of professional growth and learning opportunities available to faculty and staff. And this year, 41% responded favorably to the amount and quality of professional growth and learning opportunities available to faculty and staff.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So, excuse me, did you separate, excuse me, if they were responding favorably to the amount and the quality? Do you have more, details on that?
The, I think, common theme that we hear from teachers is a need to be more individualized and personalized with the professional learning opportunities that are provided. So in the next slide, I'm going to show you about the collaborative teams that will be forming next year who will really take ownership on what those learning needs and growth opportunities are for their teams.
Okay.
And for goal 3, the survey results, when provided this prompt, again, we had 70% of our staff responded favorably and 66% of our families responded favorably. As I mentioned, we are working hard to establish our new collaborative teacher leader teams. And these new teacher leaders will guide their district grade level or middle school content teams through collaborative activities that will improve and enhance learning for all students. We're also working to provide personalized professional learning on technology integration instruction to support all content areas and grades, PK through 8, through tiered training for staff. And we are very close to launching a digital professional learning platform, Canvas, to provide the micro-credentials, which are personalized, flexible, and mastery-based training for staff to improve teaching and learning. Goal 4, again, we have some updated metrics. For school climate in 2020, 2021, 95% of teachers responded favorably. And this year we had 62% of teachers respond favorably in terms of school climate. So that is a gap, but I do want to point out that last year students were working off campus from home or from different locations, not on campus. So we figure that's a rationale for some of the gap. When we dug down into the questions in which had a lower percentage of scores, it was around collegial relationships. And we feel that the new collaborative teams will help support and foster improved relationships amongst colleagues. And well-being, 61% of them responded favorably last year and 60% of teachers respond favorably this year. And we're looking forward to integrating our PBIS teams again next year as we are working more towards a normal rollout. So our goal 4 survey results, when given this prompt, 75% of our staff responded favorably, 64% of our families responded favorably. We are going to continue to support our schools with the continued implementation of PBIS. We're going to continue to provide the inclusive curriculum, and so that's curriculum where all students can see themselves reflected, and practices that support diverse perspectives. and continue to provide mental health and counseling supports at the sites and district level to promote a positive environment. And goal 5, the updated metrics. Again, this is the family panorama data for family school communication. Last year's survey, we had 76% responded favorably, and that increased to 90% this year. When given this prompt for goal 5, 75% of our staff responded favorably, 65% of our families responded favorably. We will continue our expanded parent and community involvement at the district and school level through our family nights, community events, parent education, and communication in multiple languages through various media, and expand business and other community partnerships to increase resources to help students reach learning goals through mentoring and tutoring. And our next steps is on June 8th. There will be a public hearing here on the LCAP. With the goal of adoption on June 22nd, and we need to submit the adopted plan by June 30th to the County Office of Ed. Questions?
I actually had one question when you were talking about ethnic studies and the children having the option to do it for, all 3 years. We had a previous presentation where we were having issues with staffing ethnic studies. Is that going to cause an issue with the students being able to do it all 3 years, or is that going to change the optionality at all?
So by keeping it as an elective option, you reduce the number of teachers that are required to teach it. Hopefully we can have multiple sections at each grade level. The current teachers who have gone through the training are well equipped now to continue to kind of train the trainer model and bring new teachers on board. They have strong conviction and beliefs around all that they have accomplished over the past 2 years and are really excited to try to recruit more people to work with them in unison. So I think it will be good.
Okay, thank you.
I just had a quick question. I know for most of the goals, you mentioned the gap between staff and families. I was wondering, I don't know if you've had a chance to take a look at more of the data, but I was wondering if you had any thoughts on why the gap in between staff and families, because it seems like some are close, but some are about 10, 15 percentage points difference, which I think is outside the margin of error. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts from the numbers you've been seeing.
I think we need to do more work to understand the gap. Again, if it's a perception, do we need to increase our communication and our outreach so that families and parents have a better understanding of what's happening on our school campus? Or is there a reality gap and then trying to figure out how to close it? So I think more research needs to be done.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from board members? Cool. If not, this is just for information, so thank you very much, Ms. Scott. Next item's item 8C, Universal Pre-K Transitional Kindergarten Program. Ms. Jessica Pace, Teaching and Learning Program Director, will provide an update on the proposed expansion of the Universal Pre-K Transitional Kindergarten in Jefferson Elementary School District. The administration recommends approval of the proposed expansion of Universal Pre-K Transitional Kindergarten. Good evening, Ms. Pace.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here this evening. I'm here to talk about an exciting plan that's happening in our district. We are going to be moving forward with Universal Pre-K, expanding TK in California. So I'd like to share with you some of our thinking to get your approval on our plan moving forward. The state has asked us to look at the 5 following areas for consideration as we develop our rollout of TK in our district. First, taking a look at the vision, workforce recruitment, and how we're going to support our staff with professional learning, curriculum and instruction, as well as assessments, our facilities, and how we're going to engage with the community and our partners. To begin with, this vision began back in 2012 When a team of us here from Jefferson, myself, Debbie Borda, Sandy McCulick, and Lisa Zamiga, were asked to participate in a committee with San Mateo County to head out to Harvard Education to really focus in on what was happening across the nation in pre-K through third grade and how different districts, different communities, different states were aligning so that early education was receiving a priority and children were really becoming ready for school before entering kindergarten. And so back in 2012, for me, this is really when the vision of what high quality early learning in JESD began to look like. Our TK expansion, in 2014, after that, we began our TK program. And concurrently, in 2015, we had our San Mateo County Big Lift initiative underway, where we were a participant. More recently, in May 2021, the governor announced universal TK funding, and excitingly, in September of 2021, Assembly Bill 130 was signed, with the plan being that by 2025-26, districts in California would fully implement universal TK programming for all 4-year-olds in California. Super exciting. Next slide, please. So the timeline for rollout of universal TK is as followed. Currently, our students in TK fall between the birthday date range of September 2nd through December 2nd. Starting next year, this is going to begin to expand by 2 months. So birthdays will expand to September 2nd to February 2nd. The following year, it'll expand 2 more months, taking us out to April. The following year, 2 more months, taking us out to June, until we hit our goal of 2025-2026, where we will have TK for all 4-year-olds who have a birthday by September 1st. So for us, what is this change looking like? Currently, there is no ratio specified for the number of TK students in a class. In our district, we have 24 students with 1 credentialed teacher. And the eligibility is just September 2nd through December 2nd of the current school year. Moving to universal TK, they have capped a class to be maximum capacity of 24 students, but they've changed up the ratio. They now have a 12-to-1 ratio for next year, and if funding is available, it will switch in 2023 to 24 to a 10-to-1 ratio, which means our classrooms are going to switch to have a teacher and an instructional assistant in those rooms. And then we'll have full implementation for all 4-year-olds by 2025-2026. So what's exciting for us is we're going to continue here in JESD to provide our families with options, which is what the spirit of universal pre-K expansion of TK is all about. Families who have a 4-year-old will be able to have a choice of participating in one of our TK classes. They can continue to participate in one of our preschool classes that services 3- and 4-year-olds. But what's exciting is that families will be able to sort of customize. So if they're on a campus for TK and they need access to full day learning, maybe they need before school childcare, maybe they need after school care, they will be able to take part in those so that working families can know that their child is receiving quality early learning in our district. So thinking about projections, currently, we have 93 TK students in 5 classes across the district. Next year, looking at our current enrollment, we're looking that might be a little bit higher, more to 110 students, still within 5 classes. As we begin to project out in 2023-24, this is when the ratio changes from 10-to-1. So we're looking to serve 120 students in potentially 6 classrooms, so expanding. the following year expanding to a 7th class, and by full implementation, 8 classes across the district. Again, these projections are all based off of what we think might happen, but we're going to open classes for the number of students that we have. So if we need to expand quicker, we'll add more classes. If we need to keep our number at 5, then we'll keep our number at 5. In terms of staffing, there are some changes in the requirements. For our teachers who have been in the TK class teaching since July 2015, they are going to be grandfathered into teaching TK, which out of our existing 5 teachers, 3 of them fit this criteria of being grandfathered in. For 2 of our teachers who are newer to the TK, they will need to receive 24 ECE units by August of 2023. So these 2 teachers are already beginning this summer to start to take some of those classes at Skyline College. As we think about our curriculum, we're in a great spot. We have adopted curriculum for TK. We have our benchmark Ready to Advance program, as well as our Bridges Mathematics and our Handwriting Without Tears program. What we are going to be adding is the Brigance assessment for early childhood for our TKers. And this is an age-specific screener that allows our teachers to be able to quickly assess the skills of our students that are those critical predictors of success in school readiness. Some of the domains that we'll assess in the Brigance will be language development, some early academics, self-help skills, social emotional, and their physical development. Here's the exciting part, the facilities enhancements that we are able to provide with this expansion. And to get a better look at this, I did give you a handout of some of these layouts for you to see. We have been working closely with TK teachers to come up with some new layouts of the classroom, and we are proposing to purchase some new furniture for these rooms so that our TK classes really become early learning environments that are ready to support our 4-year-old learners. Next slide, please. The room layout has a combination of teacher-directed or assistant-directed areas, but it also has a lot of opportunities for students to have free exploration, whether it's dramatic play area or the blocks, and really begin to have that balance of a sensory area, arts area, really setting up an environment that's rich and exploration-based, so our kids will have an opportunity to really thrive in this kind of layout of the room. In addition to the furniture, we're going to be purchasing some instructional materials, really enhancing some of the science area you can see there and the dramatic play area, really adapting what our program looks like for TK to support the needs of early learners, 4-year-olds. In addition, we will be enhancing the outdoor learning environments. There are cabanas to be put out there so kids can be reading and doing puppet shows, sand and water activities. Next slide. And my favorite here, check out this mud oven area and sand area and new bikes for kids. So with our PK planning and implementation grant, we are proposing the following budget to be spending money on the furniture for these classrooms, the outdoor learning environment enhancements, and the instructional material enhancements. And our last area of focus has been community engagement. Back in January 27th, at our virtual TK Kinder event, we began to message out to families the expansion of TK and started the enrollment process. We updated our Welcome to Kindergarten website for families, which has information on all of our sites and our programs. And at the beginning of May, I began meeting with the TK teachers and the administrators from these sites to be planning this expansion. And we've been meeting off and on all month long. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much, Ms. Pace. Any questions from board members?
Yes, I did have a question. You mentioned something about handwriting without tears. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. Handwriting Without Tears is a program that we have been using in our TK classes that really begins with showing our students how to hold a pencil, how to work on fine motor, how to build letters. There's a whole series of blocks that they can utilize to begin to build the letters and make the connections there. There's sand that they work from to be able to use their fingers to form the letters. There's sandpaper. It's really a multi-sensory exploration time for students to be able to begin to have some basic letter recognition and formation.
Thank you. Sounds like a lot of fun.
It really is.
Thank you, Ms. Pace. I think, I've always been a fan of this work. And coming from Head Start, it was very enlightening for me to see how important to have these tools with regards to the furniture, outdoor and indoor, especially at this young age, because all of these tools allow for you to also possibly monitor and assess some situations that you may not have otherwise identified at a later age. So this is absolutely wonderful. I'm so grateful that we get to have it here. I think $156,000 is a small price to pay to ensure that these are the classrooms that our TK students will be able to learn and thrive in. So thank you.
Thank you for making that presentation. I'm really happy to see this on the agenda. I do have a few questions. With regards to, I think you said as we expand and as the grade level, or not the grade levels, but the age levels change, for a parent that might be a little concerned in the terms of maybe their child turned 5 right, right after the cutoff. And so their child is now in TK because maybe they're 4 for a month in. And then now a child that may be turning from 3 going into 4. How are we, and I'm assuming that the instructional aid is going to help with that, but how are we ensuring that maybe the older child from a maturity level isn't, taking a step back because of maybe the behavior of a child that's younger and still trying to get their bearings on being in a classroom setting?
I think that's a great question and something that we're going to be sort of a work in progress in as we really begin to lower our ratio in our classrooms. I think we're going to be able to better meet our students' needs and be able to pay that close attention to where our students are. Also sort of moving away from that whole class rug model. You have a lesson, then you go to your table and you work, which isn't appropriate for our 4-year-olds, to be able to have small circle time in the morning, but then free choice exploration, being pulled based off of a differentiated group for your needs. So I'm really hoping that we're going to be able to customize students' needs right within the classroom by that new structure as well as our new ratio.
Perfect. I'm glad to hear that. And then the second question that I have, I know you talked about having care before school started. What about care after? Because I know, like with the kindergartners, they leave earlier. Some schools have aftercare for them, but some don't because of, again, the age levels, and they're in like the broader population with the older kids. What does that look like now for a 4-year-old coming into the schools?
I can speak to that. My husband is a pre-K teacher at JFK, and some of his students go to before school care if the family has that need. Many of his students go to the after school program champions now. And so when his class dismiss, him or his instructional assistant walk those children over to that particular program, and then they have access to participate. Most of his children get picked up, but I think the spirit of this is those options for families, so we can really help to customize so that working families can have a quality program all day long for their child if they need that.
Perfect. So I am a parent of a child that did TK in our school district, and I was very happy with the instruction. And so I'm very happy to hear that it's going to be brought in to allow for other children to have access to this as well. Being where we live, it is very expensive to afford childcare and preschool. And so this is going to be an amazing option, and to see the sensory tools, to see that you guys are even thinking beyond what is going to be given. You're saying, okay, well, we're going to think through, we're going to be more innovative, we're going to figure out there may be changes. I'm really, really excited to hear that, and I appreciate the presentation. Thank you.
If I could add something to that as well, Trustee Jordan. This is something I'll cover in my presentation, but the expansion of the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program and what that's going to look like moving forward. And that's definitely another program that's geared towards before and after school. And so there's like the normal ACES, and then you guys have been being told and hammered the ELOP, ELOG, but this is the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, which should also aid in providing different types of after-school care.
Any other questions? I just want to say thank you for the presentation. Extremely informative, and we look forward to seeing what's in store as the program rolls out. So thank you again.
Thank you.
So this is an action item, so we can.
So action item, would anyone like to make a motion on this action?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve, as recommended by the administration, the Universal Pre-K Transitional Kindergarten Plan.
Second.
First and second, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. That was unanimous. Next item is item 9E, update on May revision of the state budget. Michael Loro, Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, will present an update on the May revision of the state budget for fiscal year 2022-2023.
Good evening. Hopefully, I will try my best. My slides aren't as beautiful as Ms. Scott's and Ms. Pace's, but hopefully the content of my slides would be a great North Star for us moving forward, right? Next slide, please. So usually how we start these out, we look at the broader U.S. economy, and we scale down to the local state economy, and then we move into what does that mean for us at Jefferson Elementary School District. So right now, you guys are probably seeing in the news a lot. Our economy is facing a lot of headwinds. There's a lot of inflation, supply chain issues. Last year we had a good year in regards to GDP, which is reflective in the taxes raised by the California state government. However, we've started off the first quarter of this year in a not as good as 2021. So S&P 500 was down 15.6% year to date so far in 2022. And that'll correlate to our revenues moving forward. But there's just a lot of volatility in the world right now, even with the recent events. So we just want to be cognizant of these things and how they're unfolding, and what are these things and the effects that they have on the broader economy, right? So some of the main talking points at the May revision was, 1.5 years ago, we had a $54 billion deficit, and then we have a current almost $100 billion surplus. So it's been a whipsaw back and forth. Inflation has, really started to cripple the lower end of income, and especially in the Bay Area. And in 2012, you needed about $90,000 in income to purchase a house, and nowadays in 2022 it's around $267,000. Personal income tax which is one of the most tax that the state collects. It was 9.7% of it was capital gains in the stock market, and in the out years the state's projecting that to decrease. There's one thing that the governor is doing. He's increasing the budget stabilization account from $20 billion to $23.2 billion. What the state's really trying to say is we had a really good run in the stock market, which bolstered state's revenues. but moving forward, it gets a little rocky. It doesn't just keep going up, right? So he's really trying to pull from past experiences like the dot-com bust, when we didn't have such a good safety net, and also the subprime mortgage lending crisis, better known as the Great Recession in 2008, 2009, when school districts lost a lot of money. So we're going to try to, ride this wave of great revenues in the state, but also be prepared for the consequences if, the broader economy has tanks a little bit. So we just want to be cognizant of that. Next slide. Okay, so I talked about this at the second interim, and I'm going to talk about it again. So the reserve balance is $7.3 billion. The Prop 98 rainy day reserve, or the public school system stabilization account. And so when this is triggered, we can only have 10% of our. We're limited to 10% of reserves. It's been told by the FCMAT, the Fiscal Crisis Management Assistance Team, as well as School Services of California. You should have about 17 to 18% of reserves. The requirement by state law is 3% of 3% reserve, but 3% doesn't cover 2 months of operational expenditures. So we really try to keep a high reserve in order to combat any types of revenue losses that we might have. So at the next meeting at June 8th, I'll be bringing forth some proposals to commit funds, whether it be to increase security. I know we don't have a fencing system around George Washington, so if the bonds that are out now unfortunately don't pass, we want to make sure that we have the funds to secure the school sites. And also, other post-employment benefits. We'll explore some possibilities, but if we don't commit the funds over the 10%, the state will take it back. So we need to make sure we commit them and keep them in our coffers, right? Next slide. Okay, so the big thing here is Prop 98 is going to be $110.3 billion in 22-23. They've adjusted the 2020-2021 to $96 billion, and this current year 21 to 22 is $110.2 billion. So if you see here, there's a very slight difference in 21-22 to 22-23. So they're projecting the economy to kind of cool off, right? So, like I said, be cognizant of that, of the greater economy and how that's affecting us. There's an increase of COLA to 6.56%, and some of the major Prop 98 investments is $6.2 billion for COLA and ADA mitigation, of which I'll talk about in the next slide. I'll talk a little bit more about the Expanded Learning Opportunity Program. And other major one-time investments is an $8 billion discretionary block grant, estimated at $1,500 per ADA. And I projected the one-time funds that JESD would receive would be about $7 million. This is just a proposal, so everything in this May revision is a proposal. It's not set. These are just, as we're building our budget for next year, we're using the assumptions of the governor and to set our budget, because they want to approve their budget until the end of June or maybe into July. So this might change. This isn't set in stone. One other thing though is, they say that the $7 million of one-time funds, that's also going to be covered for mandated costs. So a mandated cost would be, in this next upcoming fiscal year, we must have feminine hygienic products in our restrooms. So we don't get funded for that. So this is their way of saying, hey, we're mandating something, we're not paying you for it, but it needs to be done, right? Next slide. So here's the $6 million question. So in his May revision, it's been on everybody's mind throughout the state of California is how is he going to address the ADA clipped. Throughout the state of California, we've lost 270,000 students. That's 13 years of enrollment loss in 2 years. JESD alone lost 761 students, which is about $7.6 million. Attendance has been down. Some things have been out of our control in getting students to be in seats, whether it be quarantines, showing symptoms. They might not be positive for COVID, but it's been hard to have, even with staff, but it's been hard to have students in seats. So what he had proposed is changing the law to say funding based on greater of current or prior year ADA to also add a computed 3-year average of ADA. So if you think about declining enrollment and year after year, you lose students, but you go down on like stepping down stairs. This 3-year average would be more like a gradual slide. Eventually in the 3rd year out, water finds its level. And because we have this reduced ADA, our revenues are going to continue just to go down, but not as abruptly. The other thing in conjunction that he had brought to the May revision was changing the 21-22 ADA enrollment percentage. So to give an example, the average percentage of students in seats for the entire year in 1920 was 96.2%. So students were in attendance 96.2% of the time. This current year, students are in class 93.87% of the time. That's a $1.8 million difference. So what he's proposing is whatever has a higher, if we have a lower yield of attendance or our attendance percentage is lower this year, we could use the 1920 attendance percentage. So we'll actually keep that funding. I look at his proposals as more of an ADA protection because throughout the state, we've lost a tremendous amount of students. So this is his way using record revenues to not give us new money, but to help soften the blow of losing funding. Next slide. Okay, so this is my attempt at making things look pretty, but in finance, it's not always pretty. So the blue line is when we were building the budget for 2021, right? So there was a 10% reduction in funding moving forward. So the blue line, we lose about $6 million and then we stay at a lower rate, right? The orange bar was the second interim in which I presented on March 9th. So there's no ADA protection. There's no ADA protection, and we lose about $6.5 million in 22-23, right? And then the gray bar is the 3-year average. So you could see with the gray bar, our funding in 21-22 stays the same, but then in 22-23, we stay almost flat in funding. Same thing in 23-24, but in 24-25, the orange bar and the gray bar meet because ADA is still declining, right? It just protects us in these 2 out years here with the 3-year average versus the abrupt drop in funding in 22-23. If you need additional clarification on this, I could definitely sit down and show you what this looks like or talk it through. But I just want to give a visual. What a tremendous help the 3-year average is helping for our revenues in the short term for now. Next slide. Here's an example of the cost of living adjustment. And so every year we get COLA. COLA isn't necessarily new dollars. What it is meant to give us funding to keep our purchasing power with the same, to keep purchasing power. It's almost like an inflation hedge, right? And so in the first district here, there's no enrollment change. And so if the COLA is 6.56%, if their initial funding was $100 million, the prior year was $100 million. The current year ends up being $106 million, right? In District 2, in the second column, there's a 2.5% decline in ADA. So even though there's the same COLA percentage, right? The percentage increase isn't 6.56%. It's really, in actuality, only 3.89% because their funded ADA went down 250. Does that make sense? I mean, if you have questions on this one afterwards, I could also speak to you, but this is just as a visual. And for those watching online, that the cost of living adjustment isn't new dollars, and it isn't always equating to what the COLA is if we're declining enrollment. Next slide. So this is an important slide here. This is the multi-year projection at second interim. So if you look at the 4th column, it says 22-23 projected budget. So you see the red figures. We had been projecting at second interim to be deficit spending $3.2 million in 22-23. In 23-24, we're projecting to deficit spend about $2 million. And then 24-25, we're projecting to deficit spend about $1 million. So this is without 3-year average 88 protection, right? Next slide. So now this is the revenue changes with the ADA 3-year average protection in the May revision. So what once was a $3.2 million deficit in 22-23 is actually $2.8 million surplus. In the subsequent year, 23-24, what was originally a $2 million deficit is actually a $1.5 million surplus. And then here's the important thing, right? In the third year out, 24-25, we still are deficit spending $1 million or just under $1 million because of declining enrollment. So these are the same expenditures from second interim. The only thing that's changed on here is the revenues from the May revision, which includes the 3-year average. It's a good thing. Next slide. So some other categorical programs here. There's the ACES, just under $800 million. There's some talk in the legislature on what to do with ACES because of the expansion of the expanded learning opportunities program. And all the funding that's being dedicated to that. They're thinking they might move this to be a 7 through 12 grade and then keep ELOP to be kindergarten or TK through 6th grade. But there's nothing set in stone. Like I said, it's just a proposal. Other things going on, there are some ongoing funding for child nutrition to meet the universal meals. That means serving breakfast and lunch to our students free of cost. There's state funding to maintain those meal reimbursements from 26 cents to almost 90 cents. So it's a 63-cent increase, which is a good thing for us. And if the federal waivers don't get extended as for the reimbursements, they might, if it does get extended, they'd use some of that state funding for kitchen infrastructure grants. So instead of using gas in kitchens, they'd use electric saving appliances. Other things, go back. Preschool funding stays about the same. There's a hold harmless on attendance, so that's a good thing. And we could be reimbursed the full contract amount. And one other thing I want to note is within the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, they proposed a $2,500 per ADA in TK 8 through 6. So we're projecting another $5.8 million for the ELOP program. So yeah, that would also be a great adjustment, but we'll see what the legislature passes. And at this point, with the budget surplus, we are fully funding, the government has fully funded the ELOP program instead of it being like a 3-year rollout, which is also a great thing. Next slide. So some of the things we plugged into our multi-year projection, moving for the 22-23 budget, the funding is almost $59 million, which is a $6.1 million increase over the second interim. Cost of living, the out-year COLAs are 6.56% in 22-23, 5.38 in 23-24, and 4.02 in 24-25. In prior presentations, this is very important. We've always, even with Ms. Kessler, we've always projected using flat enrollment, even though we knew we were declining. Moving forward, we're using a cohort-based declining enrollment model, which means if there's 500 first graders in this year, there's going to be 500 second graders in next year as those kids move through our school district. And then we work closely with Mr. Valenti's team in determining the additional enrollments we have, if TK comes. The good thing about the TK program too is as we get those additional students in, that also counts to money we're receiving, right? And this does not include the ADA percentage of 96.2%. That would help us in our 3-year average. Also, the unduplicated pupil count is projected flat, even though there are universal meals. Step and column is going to be included in the out years, and we are currently in the 22-23 negotiations. Next slide. So it's a lot of information. It's record-breaking revenues for the state. The message that's presented from the governor is that we have record revenues, but it's most likely short-lived. We need to remember that school districts don't get in trouble in the bad times, they get in trouble in the good times. And we need to make sure that we're keeping a close eye on the developments at, the broader US level economy and also the state economy. There's I'd like to point out with the universal meals serving breakfast and lunch for free, there's no incentive really for families to fill out the free and reduced meal form, which is a detriment to us because we then will lose out on the supplemental and concentration funding. So we have to try as best we could. And I'm definitely going to be working with the cabinet and figuring out more penetrative ways for us to get into our community. For those who find it, hard to give school district information, we're going to try our best to try to, make those connections and have those be filled out, because that would definitely help us out. Not included in his May revision is STIRS and PERS relief. So that's going to be going up 2.18 and 2.46% increasingly. So, we keep the same people, the same employees, the same staff, but they cost more money on the pension side as those obligations happen. And another thing I do want to point out is because we are in a test one environment for Prop 98, our 22-23 funding, right, moving forward into 24-25 isn't guaranteed, right? So if the state has a bad year and they say we don't have money to give you, they could say, all right, we're going to take 10% like they did in 1920 because we're in a test 1 year. So remember that. Remember that. They can take away money if they don't have it. So the funding that we're getting now isn't the floor. Just remember that. Next slide. So the next steps is we need to approve our budget by June 30th. On June 8th, we'll be presenting our budget in its entirety along with Ms. Scott's LCAP, or the JESD's LCAP, our LCAP. And it'll be open for public comment. And then on the 22nd, we'll be moving to approve the budget. After, the weird thing about school district budgets is we have to approve them before the state approves their budget, right? So, what's going to happen is there's some things that you're hearing today that are going to be okay and they're going to pass, and there's going to be other things where they're going to compromise on, and it might impact us, it might not impact us directly, but 45 days after the state's budget's adopted, we'll meet again, and I'll have another presentation on what are the changes to our budget from the state's budget being passed. Next slide. Questions?
Thank you. Any questions? I have a question.
Sure.
So I was looking at the multi-year projections from the second interim, and then the multi-year projections from the May revision. Notice that you said you're using the 3-year out average. What does is that the it's just for clarification, is that the plan being proposed by the governor, or is there a chance that
Yeah, so there's, to not confuse, there's another major another proposal that is out there. It's called AB 1948 by Ting in San Francisco. So what he's proposing to do is, I believe, 15% added to the base, which would be new money, right? So right now, what Governor Newsom is doing is he's adding another layer of ADA protection, which in a declining ADA environment, we're going to eventually, the average, when you keep having lower numbers, the average goes lower, right? With AB 1948, what they're proposing to do is add more money to the base, which isn't ADA protection, it's just more money per student. During the May revision every year, all we can do is make our best assumption. What the School Services of California, one of the biggest consulting services all over the state of California, what they recommend, what CDE recommends, what I think is they'll meet somewhere in the middle. Hopefully, I think, what they've given us as a 3-year average is definitely helpful, but also increasing the base would benefit as well.
So I was going to ask, is there a possibility that they just take the off of this chart here, just the orange bar of the no average? Is that a proposed idea, or is that just like suggested?
Can you say that again?
Is that like a proposed thought from at the state level, or is that just more of just for our awareness?
AB 1948?
Or no, the orange bar at the fiscal year 21-22 second interim no average. Is that just...
We believe that because Governor Newsom proposed it in his January budget and at the May revision, that the 3-year average is going to be what's happening.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
That's what we believe is going to happen. That's why at second interim, we didn't use an average. We used just the standard grader of current or prior year. But because he's, said it in his January budget and he said it again in the May revision, it's pretty much in the forefront that we think with a high certainty that that's what's going to happen. Like I said, we're going to use that in our budget development process. And if something changes, if AB 1948 gets approved instead of 3-year average, this bar chart would be at that point outdated, right? So as, for the members watching, as we continue to move through the budget development process, and as the state develops and approves their budget, we're always going to be making changes, right? So there's never, when you're looking at these projections, it's not a measuring stick for how wrong we were. It's just we're using the projections and the best knowledge and information at the time that's given to us, actually given to all school districts across California to make decisions on how the budget is being made.
Okay, cool, got it. And then I just had one more question. I know you mentioned that the budget doesn't include any STIRS or PERS relief. You mentioned the increases. Did the governor actually propose any additional support, or is it just more of pending?
Yeah, so what I think, he has $8 billion in discretionary one-time funds, right? And that's very Governor Jerry Brown-esque. I think that what they might do is use that $8 billion to pay down pension liabilities. So which is still a win for us, right? And it helps lower the cost of rising pension costs. Like, in years like 2021, when the stock market is good, it's good for pension programs because our contribution goes down. But in years when stocks and investments are down, our contribution has to fill that gap, right? To fund those pensions.
So if the discretionary doesn't actually go in effect, does the what would be that dollar amount for that increase that would affect our budget this coming year?
Are you asking what would be the amount of discretionary one-time funds JESD would get?
Yeah.
$7 million.
Okay.
It's a considerable amount.
So it'd be on top of the STIRS and PERS relief. Or is it
Well, STIRS and PERS would still go up about 2% each next year, but we would get $7 million of one-time funds. The talk has been that they're going to be along the lines of learning loss mitigation, mental health. So I don't want to say restricted, but I'm hoping that there's not a plan attached to it. But that's just a lot of money for the state and the legislature to decide on. So I don't see it. That's why, like, when we're building our budget, I'm not going to include this in the 22-23, because to say that we're getting $7 million and we don't get $7 million, I'd like to be more on the conservative side.
Okay, cool. Okay, thank you. So I think I've asked all my questions. Does anybody else have any other questions or comments?
The only question I had is you mentioned the working with the district to help figure out, how we're going to communicate to get back the
Free reduced.
there we go, the
Yeah.
free and reduced lunch. What was the percentage change from what because I know you said, we've talked about this before. Was it a large gap in what we were receiving
It was
back
not
from-
as large as we anticipated. I think last year our unduplicated pupil percentage was like 66,
Yeah, it was.
64%.
Okay.
So it wasn't as large as we thought it was going to be last November. It came through. A large part of that is that English learners make up probably our biggest population in unduplicated pupils. And so what we need to do is look at how many students are just free and reduced lunch, not an English learner, and those would be the students that we'd want to target to make sure that they return their applications, because they would be new students. We're already counting the students who are English learners. We're already counting students who are homeless and foster youth. The ones that we need to identify are the ones that are only free and reduced lunch, and outreach to those families.
And some students, and to add to that, some students are directly certified because their family is receiving some other type of assistance within the state. So they're in turn directly certified as free and reduced lunch. I think it's more about, it's different for somebody in the business office like myself to go to a school site and ask parents to do it. But if it's a lot different when it's a teacher, members of the community advocating for that. So hopefully we can figure out incentives in order to get people to fill these things out.
And now that we're back in person, I vaguely remember we were including it as a part of the packet that they would start at the beginning of the year. Are we continuing to do that?
Yeah, it is part of the opening day packet, and it is also online. So we used to, do big drawings. Everyone who turned in an application gets entered into the drawing. We are seeking partners. If that's how we're going to pursue this. We had Sodexo partner with us and provide us with some iPads, or I think
Raffle
one year
items.
they offered, tickets for 4 people to go to Disneyland for one day. So that was a big incentive for some of our families to just turn in an application, whether or not you qualified.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys. I spent a lot of time working on these things, and any questions, if you don't have any now, if you have some later, like an aha moment, you could always reach me by email.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you.
Laura. Appreciate it.
Mr. Law.
Next item is item 10A, certificated personnel, retirement 2021-2022. The administration recommends approval of a retirement request from James Natuzzi, independent study teacher at Thomas Edison, effective June 11th, 2022. Mr. Natuzzi has been employed by the district since September 1st, 1994. The administration also requests an appropriate resolution be prepared commending Mr. Natuzzi for his years of service with the district. Mr. Valencia.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, Mr. Natuzzi has really been particularly helpful these last few years with our independent study program. Also, he came in when we really needed somebody else for our virtual school. For the longest time, he worked with Miss Bell over at Thomas Edison as their site teacher, the student teacher support teacher. And I just want to wish him the best of luck in his retirement after 28 years with the district and a long, long commute every day. I'm sure he'll be able to enjoy himself moving forward. So I just want to make that recommendation and thank him for all his years of service to our community.
I'll make a motion to approve the retirement request for James Natuzzi, independent study teacher at Thomas Edison, effective June 11th, 2022.
On the
Second.
motion?
There's a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That was unanimous. And congratulations, Mr. Natuzzi, and thank you for all your service to our district. Next item is item 10C. Hire certificated substitute teacher 2021-2022. The administration recommends hiring the following certificated substitute teacher at the rate of $171 per day. Cameron Mudd. Mr. Ali.
Yes, I just wanted us to take the time to just thank Cameron Mudd for taking on this new position. Well, I'm assuming that is new. Yeah, okay. That's it. Then, so I'll make the motion that we approve the hiring of Cameron Mudd.
Second.
First and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That was unanimous, and welcome to the district. Next one is 10D, administrative appointment 2022-2023. The administration recommends approval of the following administrative appointment. Sandy McCulloch, administrator on special assignment, district office, effective July 1st, 2022, 1MWMA, step 20. Ms. Lee Ganawai.
Yeah, thank you, President Koo. I had asked to have this removed from the consent agenda because I appreciate, as we talk about teacher retention and teacher recruitment and also getting support in areas that our district may need, I appreciate knowing that we're bringing someone that we definitely admire and appreciate her expertise, in our administration. So I asked to remove this because I am very grateful to welcome back Ms. McCulloch to the JESD family. So thank you. And with that said, I'll make a motion.
I just want to say that had she been in the country, we probably would have had her here. So, but she's still in Vietnam, so we'll have her watch this portion of the video if you want to say anything. But you have a motion on the floor.
I'll second the motion.
We've got a first and a second.
There's at least a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And welcome back to the district, Ms. McCulloch. Next item is item 10E, Administrative Services Subsequent Variable Term Waiver 2022-2023. The administration recommends approval of 2 subsequent variable term waivers for Fiona Hansen, Dean of Academics at Ben Franklin Middle School, to waive the administrative program while Ms. Hansen completes the Cal APA Cycle 2 in order to obtain her preliminary administrative services credentials, and April Holliver's speech intern special education while she continues to complete coursework to earn her speech, language, and hearing credential. Ms. Fonsi.
Yes, both Ms. Hansen and Ms. Hullivers, like many of us, are going through that, their experience having to get another waiver as they continue going to school. Ms. Hansen through the County Office of Ed, and Ms. Hullivers through the California State University at Northridge. Ms. Hansen just is finishing up her first year as a dean, and Ms. Hullivers her second year as a speech pathologist. So I highly recommend that the board consider and approve the variable term waivers as stated.
I move that we approve the subsequent variable term waivers for Fiona Hansen and April Hollivers.
Second.
First and a second, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. That was unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is employment, classified personnel under 11B. The administration recommends approval of the following classified employees. Probationary, Juan Acuna Funes. Custodian 3 at Rivera, range B33, step 1, 8 hours a day, 12 months a year, effective May 2nd, 2022. Substitute Kevin Velasco Ferrer, school administrative assistant, sub-range A35 as needed, effective May 9th, 2022. Substitute Brianna Alexandra Arqueta, SCIA, sub-range A31, instructional assistant for special education, sub-range A25, as needed, May 4th, 2022. Substitute Maria Eileen Tile de Jesus, instructional assistant for ASP, sub-range A23 as needed, effective May 3rd, 2022. Substitute Juan Bernardino Velasco, custodian 1, sub-range B29, custodian 2, sub-range B31, custodian 3, sub-range B33, maintenance utility tech, sub-range B33 as needed, effective May 2nd, 2022. Substitute Charmaine Lynette McCoy, school administrative assistant, sub-range A31, office assistant 1, sub-range A27, attendance tech, sub-range A32 as needed, effective April 26, 2022. Substitute Gowrie Eswaran, instructional assistant for PE, sub-range A23, instructional assistant preschool, sub-range A23 as needed, effective April 18th, 2022. Substitute Shannon K. Olson, payroll tech, sub-range A26 as needed, effective April 15th, 2022. Substitute Louisabelle Antigua Chow, union yard supervisor for minimum hourly wage as needed, effective April 1st, 2022. Mr. Ali.
Well, thank you, President Koo, for reading all of that. Once again, I just wanted to publicly acknowledge all these people and let them hear their names. So thank you.
And if I can just say as well, especially lately with all the things going on, the hard work our substitutes have been putting in both on our certificate and classified side have just been so incredibly helpful. And we just really couldn't do it without them, and much appreciated. And thank you for taking them out for consent, off of consent. I think that's very appropriate.
And okay, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the hiring of all the named substitutes.
Second motion.
There's a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. That was unanimous, and welcome to the district. Next item 12A, under Board Policy Administrative Regulations, December 2021 CSBA Board Policy Updates and Administrative Regulations 6115, Ceremonies and Observances, second reading. The board will review and revise Board Policy Administrative Regulations from December 2021 CSBA Board Policy Updates and Administrative Regulation 6115, Service Ceremonies and Observances as stated in a second reading. Any questions or comments? If not, I will entertain a motion on this action item.
I will make a motion. Need my glasses. I will make a motion to approve the policies and administrative regulations from December 2021 CSBA Board Policy Updates and Administrative Regulations as written and stated in the second reading.
Second.
First and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. That was unanimous. Next item is item 12B. Board establish policies and procedures for resolving complaints. Members of the governing board review board established policies and procedures for resolving complaints and concerns. These policies and practices are informed by state law, education code, and local agreements with employee groups. Mr. Vidalis?
Yeah, I can introduce this. So at our last meeting, there was a request or a desire expressed to try to learn more about the board established policies and procedures that the board has already decided how complaints are to be addressed. When we receive complaints, we don't start from scratch. So I thought it'd be important to just do a quick review of the board established procedures and have conversation. Perhaps if there's desires to change any of them, we can certainly incorporate that into a future revision of a policy.
All right, Ms. Scott and I are going to do a little back and forth here with each of them. So as you saw, there's quite a few different policies already out there that have been established for putting out complaints, whether it be for some of the things we've heard recently. We've got our complaints concerning district employees, complaints concerning instructional materials, the uniform complaint process, as well as the Williams uniform complaint procedures, all of which are outlined in board policy, have their own timelines associated, as well as processes that are clearly defined. I'm here to cover a few of them, as well as Ms. Scott. I'll start with complaints concerning district employees. So with everything in all of these complaint board policies, it's always established that every effort should be made to resolve the complaint locally at the earliest possible stage, informally with the person or people that it starts with. It's no different with the with the complaints concerning district employees. There's also, the process involves an informal direct communication, formal written communication to the direct supervisor should the complainant not feel that the complaint has been resolved appropriately. In that step 3, the subject of the complaint shall be notified within 5 days of next steps, and that hopefully the investigation and attempt to resolve the complaint would be done within 30 days. If they're not satisfied with the resolution of that complaint, they have the right to appeal to the governing board. This will go to Ms.
All right, thank you. The next policy is complaints concerning instructional materials. So the goal is that complaints concerning the content or use of the instructional materials shall be properly and fairly considered using established complaint procedures. And there is a form available for families to complete. A very similar process. The first step is an informal complaint. The parent should speak directly to the principal. If there is no resolution, then the second step is to write a written complaint and submit it to the principal, who in turn will submit it to the superintendent. It is then in step 3, the superintendent's determination if there needs to be a review committee or if he or she will make a final determination. If there is an investigation, the material that's in question can stay in, what do they call it? Stay in process while it's being reviewed. Families can request that their student not be in the classroom when that material is in use. The review committee, if it's decided that that is needed, would be composed of administrators and staff members and would look at board policy to determine the extent of the material, if it supports the curriculum and its appropriateness, and make a decision. If the decision is not accepted from the complainant, they can appeal again to the governing board.
Thank you. Another type of complaint procedure out there is a uniform complaint procedure. And those are to investigate and resolve complaints which may require a more formal process in order to ensure the compliance with state and federal laws and regulations governing educational programs. These include violations of federal state laws or regulations governing specific educational programs, prohibition against requiring students to pay fees or participate in educational activities. And the biggest one probably out there is the unlawful discrimination, harassment, and intimidation or bullying of employees and or other folks at the school. Next slide. Again, procedurally, there's the notification, the filing of the complaint. If there is, the mediation does not resolve the complaint, there's a continued investigation. when we have the findings of that investigation, corrective action is taken. And again, the complainant has that right to appeal to the board. And of course, classified personnel always have the Personnel Commission as an outlet.
And finally, the Williams Uniform Complaint Procedures. Every effort should be made to resolve the complaints regarding, this is not the correct slide. Should be insignificant or insufficient textbooks and materials. So there's 3 different types of complaints for Williams materials: insufficient textbooks, materials, teacher vacancies or reassignments, condition of school facilities. There is a form that can be found on our website for families to complete. They complete the form and submit it to the principal or designee, who in turn forward it to the superintendent within 10 days. The remedy or resolution after the investigation is not to exceed 30 days, and the resolution can be appealed to the governing board, and there are quarterly reports made to the school board.
So now we're away from the general complaint processes that are outlined in board policy and moving on to what's outlined in the collective bargaining agreements that both CSEA and AFT have, and as well as what might be outlined in the rules and regulations of the Personnel Commission, which are similar with the CSEA procedures. But again, the purpose of this procedure is to secure at the lowest possible administrative level an equitable solution to grievances. It's taken right out of the contract, in which both parties can agree that the proceedings will be kept as informal and as confidential as may be appropriate at any level of the procedure. So it's between the 2 parties or the small group of parties that it involves. I'm sorry, I should have asked you next slide. Oh, you don't have the other one? Oh, okay, well, I'm going to continue because I have the right one right here, my mini computer. Thank you. The grievance process and procedure start with level 1, discussing the grievance with the principal or immediate supervisor. Again, moving up to level 2, if the person is not satisfied with the disposition of the grievance, they may file the grievance in writing to the union and to the superintendent. And that can also be done if the timelines are not acknowledged and respected. If past level 2, the grievant is not, the complainant, is not satisfied with the disposition, or again, if there was no written decision by the 10 working day timeline, they may request in writing that the union submit the grievance to arbitration. And then it would move forward to arbitration, in which the union would notify the superintendent in writing of the decision and submit that to the arbitrator. And I believe that is now, again, with classified personnel, they have the additional outlet of the Personnel Commission. And the classified unit, they have binding arbitration should it go beyond the Personnel Commission, whereas the certificated unit does not have binding, it's non-binding, so whatever the decision would be made, it would be made by the board. And so those are just a general outline of the grievance procedures as well that are outlined in the collective bargaining agreements, as well as the different complaint processes that are out there. Thank you. Any questions?
Cool. Thank you so much. Do board members have any questions or comments about what was presented in regard to process?
Well, thank you for taking the time to illuminate us with that. I actually really appreciate this because we get a lot of complaints. You all get a lot of complaints. And I just like when we all are on the same page and we understand the process and the protocol, and that people aren't just left to their imagination that nothing is happening, or whatever the case may be, that we all know that there actually is a process. And I may have missed it, but a few times you said that after following protocol, and if people didn't like the outcome, they could appeal to the board. What is the formal way for them to make that appeal?
Sorry. They would have to go through all the steps and then it would need to be put into writing. Yeah. And again, with classified, because they have the additional option of our Personnel Commission in which to hear the complaint as well. That's an additional level should they not be comfortable with the disposition of the final decision at the board. I frankly have not gotten it to that level in my experience here. Fortunately, it hasn't gotten past, I think, a level 1 grievance on my end. Most of the things that do come our way are generally parent complaints. We've had 1 or 2 Williams complaints about materials, but because of the way our partnership with our unions and with our schools has been, I think a lot of it has been resolved at the local level. And one of the things that we've done recently, and I noticed here, is one of the notes for the parent complaint is that when a concern is brought to the board, that we would also tell that person who's making the complaint, here's the different avenues for which they could file the complaint formally. And that's certainly been done in my tenure here when we've had people come to the board and speak to a specific person. But usually it's done, more locally, confidentially, and informally.
So, Mr. Ali, so when there is a formal complaint filed, there is also a written disposition. And generally in that disposition notice, it says, if you disagree with this, you have so many number of days to get an appeal to the superintendent that will come to the board.
Okay.
But you need to get to that final disposition point. The only time that we've gotten to that has been in the denial of interdistrict transfers, where we don't want to lose a student because that's $11,000 less. So we say, no, you need to stay in our district. And some families do appeal that. And there's an intermediate step there that goes to the superintendent, or first the assistant superintendent and then superintendent. And we have a conversation. We learn about the reasons. And most of the times that has been resolved at that level. I don't think in my tenure that we've had one come to the school board. And in that particular case, the board rules the same way as administration ruled. It goes to the county Board of Education for final appeal. So,
Okay, that's good to know.
I think it's the uniform complaint goes to the California Department of Education for final appeal.
All right. And then you mentioned the forms. So when there is a complaint, there's forms that can be filled out by staff, by community members. Are those forms only in English? And are there digital ways to fill them out?
So today, when I was preparing, I did go on our website and saw multiple languages for the Williams complaint procedures forms. The ones that are in our contract are generally in English and laid out. The information that is listed on board policy, which does lay out the information, that's in English, but I believe is available. There's some links to and then Mr. Vidalis had mentioned the board, the forms through the California Department of Education. Those are multilingual. So some are in English, some are in multilingual.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I just wanted to make a comment. I appreciate this too. This was a good refresher. I mean, we touch it, we see it on our agenda, specifically the Williams uniform. Yeah, I know, we always see that. We see that on here. And that's actually named after my cousin. It's my uncle from the Bayview, Pastor Sweetie Williams, Pastor Sweetie Tofiona Williams, who a lot of people didn't know was a Pacific Islander because he looked like a black man, African-American man walking through the Bayview and preaching out of one of the churches right there at Quesada. But because he moved here after retiring in the military and saw that his 4 sons were not receiving a quality education. And the part that resonates with me, which he tells me this story all the time as well, is the timeliness of his complaint and his grievance, or the lack of a timeliness, a timely reply. And the reason why I bring that up, of all the years that I've been here, 7 years now, I've never seen as much public comment as we've seen these past few meetings. And I think this is a good refresher for us, but even when we receive this in our emails, instead of just giving them the actual education code, I think just like we got tonight, it was very simple, it was very concise and very clear. I think with all due respect to what we hear, I mean, we've said it in many different ways. Comments are not left here and it doesn't fall on deaf ears, but there is a protocol. And there's a protocol in place that we all have to adhere to and we all have to respect. And I just think that this would be really good information to share with the public. It's really an important reminder, especially when a lot of emotions are involved, because you all are doing your job and people need to know that. And this is a reminder that you are doing your job and you're following protocol and the due process. So thank you so much for this. My uncle would be proud. Won't tell him because he might come to a meeting and then won't be able to get him off the mic.
Any other additional comments? If not, thank you, Mr. Valenti and Ms. Scott, for the presentation. Next item is item 13, persons wishing to address the board. This portion of the agenda is available for individuals to comment on or address the board on any issue that is under the board's jurisdiction and not on the agenda. Maximum time allowed for any speaker is usually 2 minutes. Are there any speakers?
I don't have any speaker cards today.
Okay. Next item then is item 14, governance team member comments, reports, and board meeting reflection. I will first start on my left tonight. Mr. Ali.
I'll pass, but thanks. Thanks.
I'll also pass, but thank you as well.
I'll pass.
I just want to say thank you again for the good stuff that happens here. I want to thank you, Principal Bell, and a special thank you to you, Ms. Pace. Those are things that we can celebrate, you know, having our students here and speaking to, you know, our TK program getting implemented. And you were not here, Mr. Hagan, when we had, with great hesitance, had to approve your retirement, but you're here tonight. You are here tonight, and I don't want to miss this opportunity to get a little emotional for good reason. You have invested in our community for years. My children have been educated in this community, and you have been a pillar of compassion, stellar leadership, always ready to stand up and answer to the call of action. So to have you retire is a little disheartening, but well-deserved. I just want to commend you for your years of service and commitment to our community. And I want to thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Celebrate you. And I wish you many more happy days during your retirement because you deserve it.
Mr. Vidalis?
Yeah, I thought we had a great meeting today. I thought we moved along swiftly. A lot of important topics and information was shared. So thank you for sticking with us. I do want to remind the board that we do have a special meeting immediately following this, and it's just a closed session item. So don't leave when we adjourn.
Okay.
I also felt that some of the issues discussed tonight was kind of focused on our district's priorities and goals. So I just want to acknowledge those items discussed tonight. Also, I just want to give a quick report. This past weekend, I attended the CSBA Delegate Assembly meeting in Sacramento this weekend.
Can you hold the microphone closer? Yeah, thank you.
I attended the CSBA Delegate Assembly meeting in Sacramento this weekend with 250 or so delegates from across the state of California to discuss a wide range of education issues. There were a couple of updates regarding a CSBA climate change report, actually. So there was actually a report worked on for the past 2 years or so from, I think, 10 school board members from across California discussing ways that climate change is impacting our schools and how sort of impacts, especially during fire season, especially during winter storms, and the impacts on school education and learning. So I believe that report's going to be shared later this year or at the AEC conference in December. So I thought I'd just flag that as a report that's being worked on. There was an update on the May revise. Ms. Laura, you did a great job making more detailed than what was presented at Delegate Assembly. There's an update on COVID-19 and its impact on schools. There was a ballot measure that CSBA will be supporting. It is a referendum on a state bill that was passed, I believe, in 2020 to ban the sale of flavored tobacco. And the CSBA delegates voted to support keeping the bill. I don't know if that's a yes or no officially on the ballot, but support keeping the bill so that it can go into effect at the November 2022 election if it does pass or not. And then lastly, there was actually a breakout session with every board member. I think there's about 12 different sessions on governance first practices and priorities that they wanted CSBA to focus on the legislative session, at the legislative level. So there was at least probably 50 different topics discussed. Some of the high priority ones that I noticed was there was a desire for how we have at the local level a 3-year, multi-year projection for budgets. Ideally have something similar for that at the statewide level, a 3-year budget that we can potentially sort of help with future planning at the statewide level. There was a big ask to fully fund TK-3 education at the statewide level, multi-tier system of support for all students and not just for some students. There was a desire from a lot of board members across the state to treat education as a crisis like we did during COVID, that there's a lot impacted from learning loss to impacts on students and families, staff and teachers. So treat that as a top priority. Ensure that there was a mental health pipeline for all staff so that there was a way to support teachers and staff during COVID as well as in the post-COVID world. Building a pipeline for teachers and staff that would be teaching and working in our schools that actually reflected the student population in California and not just not as reflective of the communities that they serve in. And then lastly, additional statewide support for STRS and PERS. So that was there was another 2 or 3 dozen more priorities. And I think they're probably going to roll that out later this year in terms of what their legislative actions are at the statewide level. So I just thought I'd share that with everybody. So other than that, before we adjourn, I was asked to adjourn tonight's meeting in memory of the victims of the Robb Elementary school shooting yesterday in Uvalde, Texas. So I'd like to ask for a moment of silence in their memory. So with that said, I will end tonight's meeting at 9:09, and we'll convene back to our special meeting at 9:15. Thank you so much.